The veteran U.S. Capitol Police officer who killed pro-Trump rioter Ashley Babbitt during the January 6th attack, speaking out for the first time about his decision to pull the trigger.
I had been yelling and screaming as loud as I was, please stop, get back, stop. You're ultimately hoping that your commands will be complied with, and unfortunately they were not.
What did you think this individual was doing at that moment?
She was posing a threat to the United States House of Representatives.
Joining us now is Terrence Gaynor, CNN law enforcement analyst and former U.S. Capitol Police chief. Thank you so much for being with us. I know that you watched this interview with Lieutenant Byrd with so much interest, and I wonder what you thought of the interview and also the fact that he's become such a controversial figure.
Well, Brianna, my heart goes out to both him and the parents of Ashley Babbitt. And there's not much we can say to assuage their hurt in this, but Lieutenant Byrd was doing his duty. He was doing what was expected to keep those members and staff safe.
I think sometimes, and I mentioned this last hour, what gets lost in this discussion of what happened that day is where this occurred. This was the door going into what's called the speaker's lobby. It was feet from a door right into the House chamber where members of Congress were holed up. And yet somehow this has become incredibly controversial by supporters who say the folks you see here in this video, weren't posing a threat and shouldn't have been stopped. What do you say to that?
Well, Brianna, I know that hallway, that stairway, that door very, very well. So whether it was in my role as the chief of the Capitol Police and then later the years as the Senate Sergeant of Arms, I escorted President Obama there, President Bush there, and it was, as you said, just a few feet from getting inside the chamber. So the people doing this weren't people in a stroll in the Capitol. For whatever reason they came in there, at that moment, at that door, on that floor, they were insurrectionists. They were involved in criminal activity. There's no doubt about that. That Lieutenant Byrd and others tried to dissuade them, to get them to calm down, didn't work. Lieutenant Byrd was doing his duty. And I think the others that were outside with her in that doorway, yelling and screaming and breaking in there, they owe some responsibility to this too. We're responsible for each other. We expect officers to intervene when they see something going wrong, and we should expect the same thing of our citizens. So I feel bad that she got herself in that position. He didn't shoot someone who was a supporter of President Trump. He shot someone who was in the midst of criminal activity, trying to get in and do harm to members of Congress. That hurts, and I know that would trouble her parents. It would trouble me. But he did his job. He did what was expected.
He, of course, has been criticized by President Trump. Listen to what he said about that.
Former President Trump has talked about you and this incident. He says she was murdered. What does it feel like to hear that from a former president?
Well, it's disheartening. If he was in the room or anywhere and I'm responsible for him, I was prepared to do the same thing for him and his family.
Would you have his back today if you were so assigned?
I sure would, because it's my job.
What did you think about that?
Well, I think it says a lot about him and the ethics of the police officers up in that Capitol and frankly around the nation. We never cared how someone got elected, how they got into their position, whether they were Democrats or Republicans or independents, or even they had bizarre ideas about where America should go. The men and women of the United States Capitol Police protect them all equally. And I think Lieutenant Byrd demonstrated that. And the more people keep trying to turn this into some type of conspiracy theory, some execution, including the ex-president, including sitting members of Congress, are doing an injustice to us all.
Chief, thanks for being with us this morning. Terrence Gaynor. President Biden vowing to hunt down the attackers in Kabul and make them pay. So how does the U.S. do that and withdraw by